My name is Captain Emily Parker. I'm 36 years old, and I've served in the U.S. Army for over a decade. My title says logistics officer, but that barely scratches the surface of what I actually do. Most people assume logistics means I push papers or track boxes in a warehouse. Even some soldiers look at me like I'm background noise, not the one keeping their missions alive. I've coordinated combat drops, rerouted supply lines under fire, and made real-time calls that kept entire units breathing. But none of that matters to my family. To them, I've always been the daughter who took the safe route, the one who didn't go to med school like my brother, or become a lawyer like my cousins. Whenever my mom introduces me at family events, it's always, "This is Emily. She works in the Army, in logistics," followed by a polite smile like she's apologizing for it. My dad doesn't even try to explain what I do. I'm the one they mention quickly and move on. At first, I used to fight it. I'd try to explain supply chains, convoy security, and forward operating base operations, but their eyes would glaze over. So eventually, I just stopped. They think I sit at a desk all day, typing spreadsheets while the real soldiers go to war. I've had dinner conversations where my own brother said, half joking, "At least you're not out there with a rifle, right?" He meant it as a joke, but it landed like a slap. What he doesn't know is that I've been in combat zones. I've airlifted wounded men under fire. I've watched kids bleed out because a shipment got delayed 12 hours. I don't carry a gun every day, but that doesn't mean I've never had to use one. Now I'm heading back home for his wedding. First time in 2 years. The invitation came on thick cardstock with gold lettering. Looked like something from a magazine. And honestly, I almost didn't RSVP. It's not just the flight or the formal wear. It's walking back into a world that never really saw me, a world that believes I'm less than I am. And as much as I try to shrug it off, it still stings. I bought a navy blue dress that's simple enough to pass. I booked a rental car. I even took 3 days leave, which was harder than it sounds. I've packed my uniform away in a garment bag I won't open. But inside, I feel like I'm gearing up for a different kind of battlefield. Not one with bullets, but with smiles that cut, silences that scream, and questions that pretend to be curious when they're really just dismissive. Part of me hopes it'll be different this time, that maybe someone will ask, really ask, what I do. But the other part, the part that's been through this before, knows better. Still, I'm going. Not because they deserve it, but because I want to see for myself if anything's changed, or if I'm still just the invisible soldier in the family photo. The flight back to North Carolina was uneventful, but the silence in my head was loud. I kept running through conversations I might have to fake, the kind where someone smiles too wide and says, "So, still doing that Army admin thing?" Like I manage an office calendar instead of tactical supply drops. I landed just after noon and picked up my rental. A silver sedan that screamed, "Safe and forgettable," which felt about right. Driving past my old neighborhood was like flipping through a photo album you didn't ask to see. Same gas station, same diner, even the same pothole near the stoplight by the high school. My parents' house looked the same too, down to the crooked mailbox no one had fixed in 5 years. My mom answered the door with a too bright smile, arms open like we'd just talked yesterday. "Emily, look at you," she said, then paused, scanning me top to bottom like she was grading an outfit. "You didn't come in uniform. That's good. Wouldn't want to intimidate anyone." She laughed softly, but it didn't sound like a joke. Inside, everything smelled like furniture polish and lemon. My dad gave me one of those quick half hugs, the kind that say, "I acknowledge you," more than "I missed you." We talked about the weather, the traffic from the airport, and how Ryan's fiancée had picked the perfect color for the table runners. No one asked about work. At dinner, I sat between 2 aunts who spent the entire meal talking over me. One leaned in and whispered, "It's nice you're able to take time off for the wedding. That's the good thing about office jobs, right? So flexible." I smiled, said nothing, and swallowed my chicken like it was dry sand. Ryan didn't say much to me either. He looked stressed, like most grooms do, and gave me a quick pat on the back, when I arrived at the rehearsal dinner. "Glad you made it," he said. That was it. No follow-up, no questions, no real acknowledgement that I'd flown across the country for him. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. So I stepped outside for some air and wandered around the edge of the backyard. That's when I heard them, Ryan and a few of his college buddies, gathered near the fire pit, drinks in hand, laughing in that careless way people do when they think no one's listening. "She's here, right?" one guy asked. "Yeah," Ryan said. "She works in logistics, basically runs Excel for the army." The guys chuckled. One said, "So like, she's a military secretary?" "Pretty much," Ryan replied. "But don't say that to her face. She'll start throwing acronyms at you like it's combat." They all laughed. Loud, unbothered, easy laughter. I stood frozen behind the hedge, heart thudding. Not because it was the first time someone underestimated me, but because it was Ryan. My brother. The kid I used to walk to school, who once cried when he scraped his knee, and I carried him home on my back. I thought about stepping out, saying something, anything. But I didn't. I turned around, walked back to the guest room, and shut the door without a sound. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, not angry, just hollow, like a space that had finally gone quiet because I'd stopped hoping it would ever be filled. The call came just after midnight. I was half asleep in the guest room, still wearing the dress from the rehearsal dinner, when my mom's voice broke through the quiet. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Emily, it's Ryan. He's missing. They think he was taken." I sat up so fast the room spun. "Where?" "He was with that medical outreach group at the border. They were ambushed. The others are safe, but Ryan's gone." Gone. My heart froze, but my mind snapped into focus. I asked for names, units, jurisdiction, and who was leading the response. My mom didn't have answers. Just panic. I told her to stay put and hung up. Then I opened my laptop. Within minutes, I was logged into the system. I pulled Ryan's last known location and scanned the incident report flagged as high priority. Armed suspects. Remote area. Coordinated extraction is already in planning. That was all I needed. I called my commanding officer at Fort Bragg. He picked up on the second ring. "Captain Parker, what's wrong? My brother's been taken near the Texas border. I'm not asking for personal leave. I'm asking to join the operation." There was a pause. Then he said, "You're too close. You know how this works." "I do. That's why I won't stand down." He didn't argue, just sighed and said, "I'll get you attached to the logistics team. But officially, you're support. You don't lead. Not this time." "Copy that, sir." I packed in under 5 minutes. Boots, tactical laptop, field gear, credentials. It was muscle memory. As I slammed the trunk closed, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It wasn't about being seen. Ryan's life was on the line, and I was the best chance he had. No more sidelines, no more silence. I was going in. By the time I landed at the forward operations base, the mission briefing was already underway. I walked straight into the tent, duffel still on my shoulder, and asked to see the commanding officer. The lieutenant at the entrance looked at my name tag, hesitated, then pointed me toward the back. Without a word. Colonel Davis didn't even look up when I walked in. "We've already got our logistics lead," he said. "With respect, sir," I replied. "You don't have me." That made him look. I handed over my service file, 40 pages, annotated and flagged. 5 overseas deployments, 2 multinational campaigns. Lead logistics coordinator for Operation Iron Shield, where we evacuated over 600 civilians under threat of artillery fire without a single casualty. I watched his expression shift as he skimmed my record. "You've got more combat-adjacent hours than most field officers," he muttered. "And I know how insurgents operate in fractured terrain. I've rerouted supply lines through flood zones, coordinated extractions under blackout, and kept units alive when comms went dark. Sir, I don't just understand the logistics. I understand how to weaponize them." He sat back in his chair. And why should I let someone personally involved near this op? Because I know the region. I know how these guys move, how they think. And because if you don't let me in, you'll waste hours catching up to what I already see. Deploy me, or regret it later. Oh, it wasn't a threat, it was the truth. Cold, clear, and simple. Colonel Davis didn't say anything for a long time. Then he reached for the radio and said, "Patch Captain Parker into the tactical team. She's in." I didn't smile. I didn't exhale. I just nodded and walked out to the planning tent. The team inside barely looked up. To them, I was another face, another name, another piece of the puzzle. But soon they'd understand. Logistics isn't just crates and checklists. It's anticipating failure. It's predicting how chaos unfolds. It's making sure no one dies because a generator fails or a convoy is 3 miles off. I wasn't here because I was someone's sister. I was here because I was damn good at what I did. And now they were going to see it for themselves. I started with the supply manifests, not ours, theirs. Every known smuggling route in a 50-mile radius, every intercepted radio transmission, every cargo drop flagged suspicious in the last 3 months. Then I overlaid topography. The terrain narrowed our options fast. Hills, ridgelines, choke points. Any group holding a high-value hostage would want isolation, fast escape routes, and cover from aerial surveillance. Next, I mapped fuel consumption patterns. That told me how far they could have gone, how long they could hide without resupply. These guys weren't amateurs. They planned this with precision, which meant they'd plan the logistics too. That's where I'd beat them. I ran simulations, adjusting for weather, terrain fatigue, and access to fresh water. One by one, I eliminated the impossible. Then, I narrowed it to 3 zones. And one zone echo kept pulling my attention back. It was barely marked. A cluster of abandoned mining structures in a no-fly buffer zone. No active traffic, no patrols. But 2 weeks ago, a drone caught thermal signatures nearby. They chalked it up to coyotes. I didn't buy that. I pushed the intel to Colonel Davis and the recon team. "Check Echo first," I told them. "If they're smart, that's where they are." They asked how I knew. I didn't explain that insurgents think in patterns, or that I'd once predicted an ambush in Kandahar using nothing but ration shipment dates. I just said, it's the only zone where silence feels too perfect. By nightfall, the recon team confirmed movement near Echo. No visual on the hostage, but signs of multiple occupants. They were prepping a full tactical response. Someone slapped my shoulder in passing, a quiet, "Nice call, Captain." I didn't answer. I wasn't here for praise. This wasn't luck. These were years of knowing how shadows move. And finally, I was in a room where someone was listening. The sun hadn't yet risen when we moved. The tactical team loaded into Black Hawks, their gear tight, their faces set. I stood just outside the perimeter with the field command unit, headset on, eyes locked to the live feed. The silence in the air was heavier than the echo zone that appeared on the screen. Infrared showed movement 3, maybe 4 figures inside the structure. Heartbeat steady, breathing slower than it should have been. Years of training kicked in and held me still. "Green light," the colonel said. The team breached in less than 15 seconds. Gunfire erupted. Controlled. Fast. Then silence. 2 hostiles down. 1 captured. No injuries on our side. I exhaled slowly. But we hadn't found Ryan yet. Then the call came through. "We have the package. Repeat, the hostage is secure." I didn't wait. I jogged with the medics to the secondary pickup zone. Dust kicked up around the bird as it landed. The back hatch opened. And there he was, pale, thinner, but alive. He stumbled down the ramp, flanked by 2 soldiers, eyes adjusting to the light. He looked disoriented, blinking against the chaos. Then he saw me. I was in full uniform, helmet off, vest still strapped, dirt on my boots. He stopped cold. "Emily?" he said, like he couldn't believe it. I walked toward him and nodded. "We got you. You were here? You helped lead this?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. His face changed. The same brother who laughed with his friends about Excel sheets and paperwork now stood speechless. In front of the soldier he never imagined me to be. At that moment he finally saw me, not just as his sister, but as the reason he was alive. The first time Ryan opened his eyes in the hospital, I was sitting by the window, still in my tactical gear. My vest was off, but the boots, fatigues, and name tag were all still there. He blinked a few times, then focused on me. "You're really here," he whispered. "I am," I said softly. "You're safe now." He looked at the IV in his arm, then at the oxygen monitor, beeping beside him. "How?" His voice cracked. "How did you—" Before I could answer, the door opened. Our mother stepped in, flanked by Colonel Davis, who nodded politely and stood to the side. She looked at Ryan first, tears welling up, but then her eyes landed on me and stayed there. She took in the uniform, the gear, the dust still clinging to my sleeves. For a long second, she said nothing, just stared. "Emily," she breathed. "You were part of this?" "She wasn't just part of it," Colonel Davis said, stepping forward. "She led the logistical intel that made the rescue possible. Without her, we wouldn't have found him in time." My mother's hand went to her mouth. Her eyes shifted between me and Ryan, trying to make sense of something that had always been right in front of them, but they never saw. Ryan looked at me again. He didn't ask what I did. He confessed. "I said," he said, his voice thick with shame, "by the fire pit, I told my friends, you were a secretary, that you just ran Excel." The room went silent. My mother turned to him, her face horrified. "Ryan, you?" I looked straight at my brother. "I know. I heard everything." Everything. The silence was heavier than any accusation. He shut his eyes, as if he couldn't stand the fact that I'd heard him mock me, and still I'd walked into the fire to get him. "Why?" he whispered. Not an accusation, but a genuine question. "Why would you still do it?" I took a slow breath. "Because when I heard you say that, I wasn't angry. I just realized you didn't know me." But that didn't matter. I stood up and walked toward my mother, who was crying silently. "I didn't do it to prove something to you," I said, looking at them both. "I did it because it's my job. I knew who I was, even when you didn't." My mother came to my side and touched my sleeve. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm not," I replied. "Because finally, you see me." They finally saw me that day. But by then, I had already seen myself. And I'd never needed their permission to matter. I logged the mission summary late at night, long after the base had gone quiet. The hum of the generators outside was the only sound. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second longer than usual. Most after-action reports are just facts, dates, movements, logistics. But this one felt different. This one felt like a line had been crossed. Not just for Ryan. For me. For years I tried to explain my worth using the wrong language. I thought if I said the right words, they'd understand. That if I worked harder, longer, smarter, they'd finally get it. But recognition isn't proof of value. It's just a mirror someone else decides to hold up. The real strength comes from knowing your worth when no one's looking. It took years for my family to see me. To see past the desk, the files, the uniform. They never really asked about. And when they finally did, I realized something. I didn't need it anymore. Their pride felt good, yes. Their respect meant something. But it didn't build me. It didn't make me. I did that. I found clarity in the field. In split-second calls. In quiet plans that saved lives. That's where I saw myself clearest. Not through anyone's approval, but through action. People ask me now if it changed things with my family. It did. But the bigger change was in me. I stopped waiting to be seen. I started standing in my own light. They finally saw me. But I'd already learned to see myself.